Hey, how's it going, everybody? Welcome back to the Timeless Movie Podcast, episode number 169. My name is Victor Vasquez. Appreciate you joining me on this episode and this channel where all we do is talk and discuss about new movies. New movies that come out in theaters or in streaming. We first go through some non-spoiler thoughts on the first half of the podcast. Then in the second half, we dive in a little bit deeper, spoil some stuff about the movie, and then we decide, after watching this movie once, is it timeless? Is it something that I can see myself rewatching in the future, various different times? Does it become an instant classic, or do I eventually end up owning it on physical media? That is really what I aim to achieve with this podcast. And I know sometimes it's a little ridiculous because some movies might be some of my all-time favorites, but others just might be a good one-time watch. That's just my opinion when I go through some of these reviews. But if you have your own opinions that you guys want to voice, well, let me know. Reach out to me, timelessmoviepod@gmail.com. That is the email for this podcast. Again, send over any kind of review, notes, discussions about movies that you've recently seen. It doesn't even have to be new movies. It could be a movie that you haven't seen in many years or a movie that you're catching up on for 2025. I just really want to interact and discuss and talk about movies that you guys have seen as well. Also, any social media platforms like Blue Sky, Instagram, and Threads. Follow me on those specific platforms. You can search up Timeless Movie Podcast, all one word, and you can always send me a message. Let me know again about any recent movies that you've seen, or if you agree or disagree with any of the opinions that I've brought out with any of the recent movies that I've checked out. Speaking of recent movies that I've been able to check out, episode 168 of the Timeless Movie Podcast is available on platforms like YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Go subscribe, go follow, give it a listen. Would love to hear your thoughts because on 168, I ended up talking all about Park Chan-wook's newest film, No Other Choice. This movie is kind of like a comedy thriller. I had such a great time watching it. Very interesting ending, but if you want to know whether I think that film is timeless, well, check out episode 168. That way you can hear my full thoughts. All right, let's go ahead now and stop wasting time. Let's jump into episode 169 because we're going to be talking about the new entry into the Avatar series. That is right. We are talking about James Cameron's Avatar: Fire and Ash. This is the third film in the Avatar series. And I mean, this is those kind of films, there's really not much to explain as to why you would want to go watch it other than it is just a visual spectacle. There's just so much great things to look at on screen. James Cameron has created such a crazy technology to capture and to show off the types of characters, the world that he's built in Avatar. And so I'm not going to waste too much time explaining again some of the reasoning behind why I wanted to watch it. I've seen the last two films. I want to continue watching this franchise. But what's going to be interesting is, obviously, do I consider this film timeless? Well, before we get to that question, let's go to the non-spoiler section first. That way I can give you a little synopsis and a couple of highlights about what I liked and didn't like about Avatar: Fire and Ash. Okay, Avatar: Fire and Ash is directed by James Cameron. You know him. People are well familiar with his filmography, but just in case you haven't seen some of his films, James Cameron has made great movies like Titanic, Terminator 2, Aliens, and of course, the Avatar series. Cameron has this amazing ability to be able to immerse audiences into the worlds that he's building, to kind of just take you out of the real world and just bring you into just following the Na'vi. And just, again, it's all so immersive. But also what helps for his worlds being so immersive is the characters and the actors that play these characters. So some of the actors that come in and help James Cameron for Avatar: Fire and Ash are Zoe Saldana, Sam Worthington, Sigourney Weaver, Stephen Lang, Una Chaplin, Kate Winslet. So many actors are involved in this series of Avatar so far. But what is Avatar: Fire and Ash about? Well, I'm happy to tell you that Fire and Ash picks up a couple of weeks after Avatar: The Way of Water. You have the Sully family in mourning because, spoiler warning already, if you have not seen Way of Water, but I'm going to call it out here, the Sully family is mourning the death of Nitayam, who was a son, a brother in the Sully family. And so you see a lot of the different types of family members dealing with this pain, dealing with this grief. The unfortunate part is that even though they're dealing with this pain, that does not stop their trajectory from facing off against their old rival in Quaritch. He comes back trying to get revenge on the Sully family. But the little interesting layer here in Avatar Fire and Ash is that we actually now have another group, a group of savages, of raiders of the Na'vi, and they are led by the character of Varang. And Varang is looking for nothing but just control and power. And so that is essentially what we're facing in this film. The Sully family not only surviving this new savage raider group, but also Quaritch as well. And so after 3 hours and 15 minutes, that is right, that's how long Avatar Fire and Ash is. After that long session at the theaters, what were my thoughts? I thought Avatar Fire and Ash was a really good movie. I enjoyed it. And I have a very interesting kind of relationship with these movies. Apart from like how normal audience members may have checked out Avatar, I actually did not watch the original Avatar when it came out, I think in 2009. I kind of hesitated. I was like, "Oh no!" Like it's. I was maybe being a contrarian of like, "Oh no!" It seems like it's getting hyped up too much, and I don't want my expectations to just be not met when I watch that movie. And so I waited a long time, and then eventually I watched it with my fiance in the lead up of Way of Water, and I thought it was good. But what I have noticed about some of these Avatar movies is that I've actually liked it more and more as the story has gone on, and again, that's one of the reasons why Fire and Ash really worked for me is that we're not doing any buildup anymore. We know these characters, we know what they've been up to this point, and so now it's just trying to see, okay, where is their trajectory taking them? Where are these characters going emotionally, and really, what do they want to do? And so every movie that's come out, I've liked it more and more. And in Fire and Ash, there's a lot of great things to call out. It has, again, apart from the visuals, everybody's going to say how visually amazing it looks. So I'm not going to call that out. Instead, I want to call out how funny the movie was this time, or the tense action that it had. And really, more importantly, the emotion, how relatable it was, how they showed you a family that was dealing with so many things in their lives, and how each family member may have dealt with that pain. That is really what kind of hooked me into this film, and what really kind of settled me in and immersed me even more was, oh, like look at what they're dealing with. Look how hard it is. Look how some people are looking for acceptance. And so that I thought was a really a home run in this film, with just how the emotion just, at least in my opinion, landed. Let's go ahead now and dive into a couple of highlights, some pros and cons of why I liked, and maybe, some things that kind of held me back of my enjoyment in Avatar Fire and Ash. Okay, first pro that I want to call out for Avatar Fire and Ash has got to be the family dynamic. And really that's the biggest positive that I can say about this movie is the way that they highlighted the differences between the Sully family and how they were mourning the loss of a family member. And this is again, I think, is the relatable aspect to us as humans. We all mourn and we all grieve in different ways. Some people will mourn and they will let it know to the entire world that they are remembering this person. They'll wear all black. They'll, do all this stuff in regards to, just showing the entire world that, hey, I do not want to forget this person. This person meant the world to me. Then there's other people that do the complete opposite. They distract themselves in their work. They ignore the feelings that they're going through their mind, and instead they try to just get out of that situation. They get out of their own head and try to just work on something else. And so those are the types of aspects that I feel like are so interesting of the Avatar series is how, yes, we are looking at these aliens. We're looking at these kind of this entire tribe of Na'vi that it's not familiar to us because we've never seen that. We're humans, but it's still so relatable to us because we go through the same things when we lose people that we love, when we are trying to understand the feelings that are running through our bodies. So that type of emotion, it just worked for me. I thought it was so fascinating to see the Sully family again, everybody dealing with it in a different type of way, and then eventually talking through it. And as much as it hurts, as much as the reminder of somebody that you lost is always going to be painful, the only way through it is by being together and loving each other and sticking together. So everything about the emotion of it, just again, it's just solid. A solid time at the theaters, like, watching that and experiencing it. Also, apart from just like the aspect of mourning, there's other ideas too, like the idea of acceptance and the idea that like you don't know where you belong and trying to understand that too. What direction are you going to take? Are you going to accept that, hey, I'm kind of in limbo, but I choose to be Navi? Or do you reject that idea? Do you reject the aspect of like, I don't want to be a Navi? And so you have a couple of characters that are kind of facing that and are kind of mirroring that in the film. But overall, the emotion just, for me, it landed. Second pro that I have for Avatar Fire and Ash is going to be the introduction of a new group. And this new group is the Mangquan clan or the Ash people. This group was just so awesome. Just like in Way of Water, we get introduced to the clan that is always by the sea, always by the ocean. In this film, we have the Mangquan clan who is led by Varang. Varang is played by Una Chaplin. And this group is, again, I mentioned it a little bit before, raiders, savages, everything from the attire that they had, the coloring that they had over their bodies of red and black, and just the types of ideas that they represented of this group was just so interesting and it captivated me because again, it's a different type of a Navi clan. In this one, you have Varang leading this group who reject Awa. They reject the All Mother. And that I think it was such a cool aspect because I don't think that's been explored before. And again, please correct me in the comments if I'm wrong, if that has been. But so far, of all of the clans, they've always respected and they've always cherished the All Mother. You sometimes see people's faith kind of wavering, but you have this new group led by Varang who completely reject it, and they use some examples to prove that AWOL will not help in certain situations. So I thought that was so cool. The entire camp that they have for this Mangquan clan is amazing. So this group as a whole and Varang as well, this is actually what made it so much more interesting because now you have a different group that is more aggressive. They have their own ideology. They have their own way of being able to just understand the world that they live in. And it's so radical to what we've seen that it's just a great contrast. So really enjoyed this new clan. And again, I'll dive in a little bit more in the spoiler section of this podcast about this group. Okay, those are really the biggest pros that I had about this movie. Let me move into some cons. This is not in any way going to say that like, okay, this makes me hate the movie. That's not how I want to represent these cons. Instead, just things that I noticed while watching this. So first con that I want to call out is, unfortunately, the film feels very familiar. And what I mean by that is essentially there's a lot of beats that I feel like we've already seen. And especially when you just came out of watching Way of Water in 2022, there's moments where you feel like, oh, okay, well, I've seen this already before. Like you have a moment in Way of Water and in this film where the Sully family is split up. They're separated and they have to come together. Okay, we've seen that before. Oh, well, Quaritch, well, I mean, they haven't been able to get rid of him and he's the villain again of this movie. And so seeing Quaritch come back time after time and him being the antagonist for this family, again, it just becomes very routine. And that's, I think, not the goal of what this series of Avatar should be. This series should always be introducing something new, expanding the lore. And, there's still some things that were expanded on, but I just felt like there was too many similar things to Way of Water. Even the climactic ending of this movie, the battle that they have felt like something that was right from Way of Water. So that was something that was unfortunate while I was watching the movie. Uh, Again, that just kind of it didn't take me out of the experience. I just clocked it when I was watching. I was like, oh well, I mean, this would be really cool, but I mean, I've seen this before. So that was the unfortunate part. Second con that I had for Avatar Fire and Ash is, and this is going to be really weird, so stay with me, but because of how this film is animated, for some reason there was certain scenes that just ran way quicker than others. And what I mean by that is, normally a lot of the scenes in this movie, there's a natural kind of a blur where you're focusing on a character like you're looking at Spider or you're looking at Quaritch or you're looking at Jake Sully. And, you know, the face of that character is very clear, but their surroundings are all blurred. There's typically like a motion type of a blur in a lot of different types of films that you see nowadays. In this film, though, there was a couple of moments where there was no blurriness, there was no fuzziness. It was all crystal clear. The jungle behind the character, or a rock that was floating in the sky when a character was flying around. There was times where there was no blur at all, and those scenes just felt like they were running at a higher frame rate as compared to the rest of the film. To me, that just seemed really weird because my eyes kind of had to adjust a little bit when some of the action was just moving so dang quick because of how crystal clear those scenes were. I don't know if I'm articulating that in a really clear way, but to me, it felt like some of the scenes were kind of like cutscenes in a video game. It was just way too smooth. Everything was captured clearly in a specific camera shot that, I don't know, it just didn't connect when it moved from scene to scene. I don't know if that's making sense. Let me know in the comments if you agree or if you've seen Avatar Fire and Ash and if you saw that as well. Did it bother you in any way? To me, it just felt like it was very awkward because it would some scenes had that blurriness, some scenes didn't, and so I don't know. It just kind of made. I wish they kind of picked and choose what kind of style they wanted to in this film. All right, those are all of the pros and cons that I wanted to highlight for Avatar Fire and Ash. Let's now jump into the question, which is, should you guys check this out in theaters? Well, in my personal opinion, I would say that even though, yes, it is a long movie, 3 hours and 15 minutes, I personally would still recommend checking this movie out. If you can watch it in IMAX, Dolby Cinema is where I watched it. I really liked it. It is long, but there is enough action to keep you captivated, to keep you interested in what's going on. And once again, the emotion. I feel like the emotion, if that's something that's really big for you when you're watching a movie, to me, the emotion just kind of kept me so interested in like what the characters were going to do, what decisions they made, or where they were going to end up at the end of the movie. So that's what kind of kept me going. Now, I will say the caveat to this is if you have not enjoyed Avatar or The Way of Water, this film is not going to convince you. It's more of the same, especially with some of the familiar beats that I mentioned as one of my cons. If you just don't feel like you're convinced by these movies or they're just not something that you really enjoy, then you can feel free to skip on this one or wait for it on streaming. But if you at least like these movies or are interested in the lore, please check out Fire and Ash in theaters. All right, those are all of my high level thoughts without spoiling anything. Now let's go ahead and jump into spoilers. Let's talk more about Fire and Ash and really answer the question, is Fire and Ash timeless? But before we do that, again, please jump out of the podcast now if you do not want to be spoiled, because again, I will start spoiling some aspects of this movie. So trying to make some time, trying to just say a bunch of random stuff. That way you can jump out, because this is going to be your final warning because spoilers start now. All right, let's go ahead now and jump into some spoilers. Before we answer the question of, is this movie timeless, I want to kind of just give off a couple of different details of what happens in Avatar Fire and Ash. So what ends up happening? You do have a couple of deaths. You actually have the character Ronal, who is played by Kate Winslet. She actually ends up getting injured in the climactic battle at the end of the film. She gets shot by a specific type of a dart, and she ends up bleeding out. And what's so sad about this is that she was pregnant, and so she had a baby in her tummy. Luckily, Neytiri was there, and she was able to deliver the baby, but unfortunately, Ronal is no longer going to be coming out in the series. So that was one of the crazy things that happened. Then you have this really epic battle at the end that was very similar to The Way of Water. Why is that? Well, if you remember, in The Way of Water, the third act battle was a ship that was kind of in the water, destroyed. You have a couple of characters that are being held hostage. Well, guess what? In Avatar Fire and Ash, you have the same thing. This time, Took, who is the daughter of Jake Sully and Neytiri herself are captured by Varang and Quaritch. And essentially, why they have them captured is, well, Quaritch and Varang, they want to capture Spider. Why do they want Spider? Well, in this movie, Spider ends up getting some type of symbiote inside of him that now allows him to breathe like the Na'vi. So he no longer needs a mask. And so Quaritch ends up using Neytiri and Tuk as hostages in order to get Spider out and take him back to the little city that all the humans are at. And so that's essentially kind of what leads up to this crazy battle. But as you would expect, the Sully family all come together. They defeat Quaritch, they defeat Varang, and they end up saving all of, well, I guess Neytiri, as well as Took and Spider. All of that ends up happening, and then eventually the idea at the end was that Spider can now be accepted as a Na'vi. He's able to visit the ancestors, and so that's kind of what happens in the third act of the movie. I kind of want to just say all of those spoilers up front. That way we can talk a little bit more about other aspects. And one of those aspects is going to be, is Avatar Fire and Ash timeless? Is it something that I can see myself rewatching in the future? Well, the answer to that question is going to be a no for me. It is not timeless, Avatar Fire and Ash is. Some of the reasons why I think this movie is not timeless is, the first one is, I think there's just too much in this movie. I just kind of spoiled a lot of the stuff of like Spider becoming part of the Na'vi. You have Kiri, who is played by Sigourney Weaver, being able to speak to the All-Mother. You have the ideas of mourning. You have Quaritch, who has an internal battle of like, is he Na'vi? Is he human? He doesn't want to accept it. You have Varang and her clan of the Maklan, who are just savages, again, destroying different types of clans and trying to control everything. There's just so many different concepts and ideas that I wish the story was a little bit more refined. And again, I don't have a problem with it being long because, again, there's a lot of action. There's a lot of good stuff that they highlighted. And I'm also not saying that, oh, there's too many storylines that, you just can't feel like you can't attach to one. No, I actually just feel like there was so many good ideas and concepts and threads that maybe we could have chosen like 3 of them and then just stuck with those. Like if we would have stuck with Spider and his acceptance. Is he Na'vi? Is he human? What does he want to be? What does he feel like he is? Maybe we could have stuck with Varang and her group of showing, hey, we do not respect Awa. We do not believe that she is with us. She does not protect us. She doesn't do anything for our lives. And then maybe the third one could have been just the mourning of the Sully family. I think those 3 components would have made this story just all the way through much more refined, much more, specific to these types of paths. And that way it would have made it interesting as it would have jumped between all of those. Instead, you have so many different ones like Payokan, who is the whale that ends up being such a hero in The Way of Water. In this one, he kind of doesn't do as much. He still comes out, but I feel like we've already seen that before with Loak and Payokan working together. And then you have Jake having trouble speaking up for his family, for his sons. And so, again, there's just a lot that is thrown at us. I just wish could have been specific plot points and threads that we could have kept that would have just made this film run so smoothly. Still could have been long. Still could have been 2 hours and 45 minutes. But I don't know. To me, there's just so many things that they kind of tried to stuff in here. I wish they could have just split out a couple of them or focus on maybe 3 of those threads, 2 of those threads, and just try to maximize as much as you can in those moments. So that's one of the reasons, again, why I don't think it's timeless. Is just, again, there's just so much that you're watching and you're trying to pick up, and it's all good. But to me, I feel like the story needs to be a little bit more refined, more specific about what you're trying to tell. Second reason I also think that this movie is not timeless is it wasn't different enough. And this goes back to the point of the familiar beats. I mentioned it before that there's a very similar climactic battle at the end of this movie and Way of Water. Jake Sully has similar moments with his son Loak, where he doesn't feel like he can trust his son, and for that, he doesn't speak up. And so we saw those moments in the second film, and now we're seeing them again. And so when there's those types of repeating scenes or those repeating emotions, it starts feeling a little redundant. And I never want to feel that when I'm watching a type of a franchise film. I want to see something new. I want to see something expand more. And I'm wondering if I'm feeling that because of how long it's been since we saw The Way of Water. As compared to Avatar and Avatar Way of Water, that was like a 10 plus year wait for fans. And so when you got to see how much the technology had evolved, how much you got to expand into different areas of this planet in Avatar, it just all felt like such a fresh take. And here, we've only had to wait 3 years and we only got to see glimpses of differences. We got to see like the camp that the clan got to live in. You got to see this new leader in Varang, but maybe that wasn't enough. And especially from the visual side of it, everything still looked very crystal clear and beautiful, but there wasn't anything new from that kind of technology that just expanded on this franchise of Avatar. And that's kind of how I take this franchise as a whole. Is this isn't meant to like blow you away with like the story or blow you away with what's the message is trying to tell you. I think it's just trying to show you that, look, these are spectacles. We're trying to show you how movies can really change over the years with new technology and making them more immersive. So that's to me, I feel is one of the bigger key aspects of what I was thinking after I left the theater. Is I just wish that there was more expanded here in this film. Instead, I got more of the same, which kind of sucked. All right, enough of the negativity, if it sounds like that, about why I think this movie is not timeless. I want to jump into some positive stuff that I can now spoil. Favorite performances in this movie, I got to give it to two characters. First character, Stephen Lang's Quaritch. I mean, he got so many of the great one-liners in this movie. He's really, as funny enough, he's the antagonist of this movie, and he's also the comedic relief in a way because he's able to say these ridiculous things and say these funny lines, and it's just all hilarious, and you buy it. You buy everything that he is selling. And so Quaritch, whenever he's with Jake Sully, whenever he is going up against Farang, it just all felt so interesting. And maybe going back to it, I wished maybe the movie showed more of this, more of Quaritch, maybe this being his story rather than the Sullys. Maybe I'm being ridiculous with that take, but that's something that, again, I wanted to see more of, something different. Also, I guess, speaking of Quaritch, one of the aspects that they kind of teased in Avatar Fire and Ash is him teaming up with Jake Sully. There's moments where in this movie you have Quaritch having to help out the Sully family, maybe because they were on the run or they were being attacked by Varang and her clan. And so there was moments like that where, oh, the unexpected team up. Like it's like seeing Superman and Lex Luthor team up. Two characters on opposite sides, but forced to work together. That, I think, would have been such a cool aspect for this third film of having two sides that have never been in agreement working together for a better cause. That's what I was kind of expecting when you started seeing scenes of Quaritch teaming up and working with Jake. And instead, he went back to being the villain. So that was the unfortunate part. But overall, Stephen Lang as Quaritch was one of my favorite performances. And then I also got to give props to Una Chaplin as Varang, the new character, this leader of the Ash people, the clan. My goodness, she had this type of energy that she just took over a room or a setting whenever she was on screen. She had so much of this charisma that everybody was looking at her, not only her own clan, but Quaritch, Jake Sully, Sully's family. And the way her design was, I think, what was so awesome too. The way that she had this kind of like a headband and the red and black, the contrast to it just made it look so menacing. So I really enjoyed that Varang character. And also from the performance perspective, it's because of the energy that she has. She had no fear. Even when she was in moments of, where she had the disadvantage and she still was never giving in to the fear, never giving in to the moment of, you don't have the upper hand. I will find a way. And so there's just all these different things about that Varang character. I'm so happy that they did not get rid of her. I hope to see her again, and I hope to have her maybe take over the antagonist role for the next film. So Quaritch and Vrang were my favorite characters, and I think this leads me into my favorite scene of the movie, which ends up happening between Quaritch and Vrang. You have Quaritch who visits Vrang's clan where they actually meet up and they live, and it's so cool. First of all, where the Manquan clan live is near a volcano, and so it is just such a beautiful shot. You have Quaritch walking on a cliff right next to the volcano. It looks like it's active and erupting, and then he finally gets to meet Varang one on one, and it's just a battle of words. They're not fighting, they're just mentally playing chess, trying to get the upper hand over one another. And you have Varang that ends up giving Quaritch a drug. He's hallucinating. He's literally tripping out. Like you just see him from his perspective, and he's seeing colors all around Varang. But even through that, they're just having a conversation, and it was just so damn captivating seeing Varang meet an equal. And that's what Quaritch calls out. He's like, you don't want anything else. You don't want, not only control, you don't want power, you want to meet your equal. And your equal is here. And that was Quaritch. And so that whole conversation between the two characters was probably some of the best dialogue stuff, the just the most interesting aspects of this film. And I just really enjoyed it. So great stuff for Stephen Lang and Una Chaplin, who played Varang and Quaritch. All right, and then the last thing I want to call out, I kind of just mentioned one of my favorite shots, which is Quaritch walking on a cliff and seeing the volcano where the Ash people live. Another great shot was, I believe it was Jake Sully. They're flying at night, and there's this one shot. Oh no, I believe it was Neytiri who was flying, and she's flying in the middle of the night, and behind her is Jupiter, huge, and you could just see the coloring and the blue. And I'm assuming it's Jupiter because it looked exactly like that design. But man, that was an amazing shot as well. So those are my two favorite shots: is Neytiri just flying across the sky with Jupiter behind her, and then you have Quaritch who's just walking to Varang's clan and walking right by the active volcano. Some just amazing shots that they were able to capture, and all the visuals in this film just work so well. All right, everybody. Those are all of my thoughts. I'm pretty sure I rambled and I jumped into various different places in regards to the spoilers, but I really just wanted to let everything out, my raw feelings about this movie. I had a good time. I would still recommend people check this out because it is an experience, but it just wasn't timeless for me. However, I want to hear from all of you. What are your thoughts about Avatar, Fire, and Ash? Do you agree that this film has too many similar and familiar beats to Way of Water? Or am I way off on that? And also, what was your favorite performance and your favorite scene in Avatar, Fire, and Ash? Let me know down below in the comments. That way we can interact and talk more about this movie. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for listening to my full thoughts on Avatar, Fire, and Ash. My name is Victor Vasquez. This has been episode number 169 of the Timeless Movie Podcast. Make sure to check out next week's episode, because on episode 170, not only are we going to have my brother Omar join me, but we're going to be talking about the new film starring Timothée Chalamet, and it is called Marty Supreme. Make sure to follow and subscribe to the channel. That way you know when that episode comes out. All right, everybody. Thank you so much. I hope you have a great rest of your week. Happy holidays, and I'll talk to you later.